Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special webinar on bounties for Basura, organized by BSIC. And I'm thrilled today to welcome Simona Pop. Simona was the founder of a startup called Bounties that was incubated at the time by ConsenSys and is now the head of communications and development for PEPO and OST. And she's going to take us through the journey of how Bounty for Basura came about. We're going to play a video during this hour so that the audience really understands what the experience was on the ground about this, this special initiative. And then we'll ask a couple of questions to Simona, and we'll open it up for questions to the audience. But before we start and before we share this, this documentary, I would love to ask Simona, you know, how did you come about to create the Bounties Initiative? What was your journey there? And then specifically, what drove you to create that special project, Bounties for Basura? And if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, I think everyone would be thrilled.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you everybody for joining us. I think it's one of those projects that I am most proud of in my journey in crypto so far. And as Vanessa said, just as a little bit of background, I essentially co-founded the Bounties Network back in 2018. For context, the Bounties Network are the creators of the Standard Bounties protocol. You may be familiar with Gitcoin as a platform, and they host a lot of bounties that are very much geared towards technical work. They sit on top of the Standard Bounties protocol. And the Bounties Network as a platform and as a network was very much created to explore a lot of the different use cases for the bounty as a format. For those of you who may not be familiar with what a bounty is, it is a very, very simple format. It's a task somebody sets up for whatever purpose, somebody else fulfills it, and there is a reward attached to it. Because the Bounties Network was built on Ethereum, those rewards are in ETH or an ERC20 token. And so we started, because Gitcoin was doing such a great job in covering that kind of technical vertical, we really felt you know, the freedom to start exploring a lot of various other verticals, one of them being social and environmental impact. And one of the reasons why we chose to look at that is because I've personally always felt that this whole social impact realm and certainly the charity realm can sometimes be incredibly nebulous, especially when it comes to the journey funds take, depending on what it is for, what countries it, you know, it's intended for, what the different charities operating, what their kind of percentages that they take from a donation are. And so we started thinking of, how can we redesign this? How can we re-engineer this so that it becomes much more effective, much more transparent, and potentially much more helpful for people, regardless of geography, regardless of you know, of region, of technical ability, and so on. So the very first bounty that incentivized a cleanup was launched on World Ocean Day in 2018. And we wanted to launch it there and then because we thought, you know what, so many people will be posting things with the hashtag World Ocean Day, and then the very next day go back to whatever it is that they were doing before. So we wanted this viable proof that they have performed a cleanup wherever they are, we will reward them. And that initial bounty that we created on World Ocean Day 2018 was done in partnership with MakerDAO. And we were paying out 10 DAI per cleanup, per verifiable cleanup. And how we were verifying it was submit a photo with a location and a date filter with you next to the trash that you have just cleaned up. Very, very basic, very simple. It was just a test. And we wanted to see what happens. Well, what happened was that we started getting people fulfilling this bounty from all over the world. We had people from all over the United States. We had people participating from Europe, so from the UK, from Romania, from Slovakia, from Germany, all across Europe. We started getting people fulfilling it from Tasmania and Australia and India and Venezuela. It really surprised us. Like it took us aback just how many people were getting involved. And the key and the most interesting thing was that people getting involved were not native crypto people, were not people who were already in the crypto space, just diversifying the things that they were doing. There were people who were new to crypto. And because we started seeing this, and because we understood that actually earning crypto is so much more valuable than buying it, and potentially for some people, depending on the region, it may also be the only way, because exchanges, as we know, are definitely not a widespread commodity across the world at this stage. So because this went so well, and because we had such great response from it, and because we've always at that time, and certainly throughout the duration of the Bounties Network project, we always wanted to test things in the real world, we decided to create a pilot in a country that wasn't necessarily going to be plugged into the usual banking system, to the usual mechanisms that enable the dispersal of funds. And we picked the Philippines because, number one, it kind of matched those ingredients, but also because it is the third most polluted country in the world. And what we wanted to do is really go somewhere where something like a cleanup was needed, but also to a place where a lot of people are not plugged into the banking system. We are talking about the unbanked, underbanked. We are talking about people who are in a situation where the current models are not serving them in any shape or form. And the reason why we picked this beach, and you'll see at the beach in Manila Bay, was because, number one, it was incredibly dirty, obviously. But number two, the fishermen communities around this beach, this particular stretch, and they were by no means the exception, were fishermen. Now, because of the pollution, what happens is obviously the water gets polluted, the fish stocks dwindle, there is no means of income. And you'll kind of get a better sense of what I mean when we watch the video and actually the documentary. And the reason why we wanted to film it is because we learned so much about all of the different complexities that come with introducing new money, with introducing new technology, with introducing expensive data draining transactions into something that, yes, you are looking at providing new means or alternatives, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind all of the different things and all of the different hurdles that you must, overcome, and you must keep in mind when you're designing projects or products for everyone, not just for your immediate kind of audience. So I think maybe with that, we can potentially start watching it. And then I'm sure there will be so many questions that we have afterwards. And I'm excited. I just want to get to those questions because I'm sure there'll be some very interesting conversations.
we're going to show the film now. And
The DENR conducted an inspection on alleged establishments throwing garbage and disposing their wastewater into Manila Bay.
Disposable plastic used just once are one of the leading causes of pollution.
An area that was once thriving with marine life is now choked by discharge from an overcrowded city.
The trash issue really is impacting people's lives.
Pupunta dito ang tao para mangingisda. Pag-uwi, wala rin naman makuha dahil lahat ng basura napupunta sa dagat. Ang kalat.
It has also made the country the third biggest polluter of oceans. China and Indonesia rank first and second.
Many people complain that their salaries are not increasing, their benefits been cut off. It's already been hard for a lot of people, and it's getting a lot harder day by day.
Riverbanks are lined with shanty houses. Of course, they're not connected to the sewer system and they don't have septic tanks. The effluent and rubbish simply goes straight into the river.
I'm Ronald Dapines. I'm 50 years old. It's my work to gather the trash from the ocean and then we convert to some very presentable materials. Pwede natin magamit sa mga bagay.
So we're getting ready to pilot our ocean cleanup program. The one thing I knew was always essential for us going into this was finding people on the ground who were already impacting the environment within those communities. That's the reason I think that Ronald is going to play such a huge role in this because, he's already innovating on recycling methods, on the ground.
I'm from province of Iloilo, from Visayas. My life in province is my father selling fish and my mother is a housewife. Our work there is farming. Una nakarating ako rito since 1991. Naghahanap ako ng trabaho dahil undergrad ako, hindi ako nakatapos ng marine. So pumunta ako ng Manila. Tapos naghanap ako ng trabaho as a construction boy. As a construction worker, hirap na hirap ako ng trabaho after ng ilang months, no work, no salary. Pumunta ako diyan nakarating ako diyan sa may recycling na yan dahil sa isang problema. Through the helps of other colleagues, mga kasama ko sa trabaho, napag-isipan namin, doon nga sa kwento-kwentuhan lang, pakape-kape, nakikita kasi namin dahil sa likod lang namin yung basura, kami rin ang nakakaamoy ng very bad smell. Ano kaya ang maganda nating gawin para sa basura na ito? Ano kaya ang dapat nating gawin para ma-resolve natin ang problema na to?
We just spent a day cleaning up the beach for plastic and a bunch of other stuff that we do not expect to find in the ocean.
This area has such amazing beauty. It was exciting to see people really keen to participate in its regeneration. Bounties Network is pretty much a very simple tool on the Ethereum blockchain. It's a task that you create, somebody fulfills it, and a reward is delivered to the fulfiller. The idea was to re-engineer the way social impact works, whereby we incentivize individuals and reward them for their positive action, for their positive social impact, or in this case, environmental impact.
So the way it works is that you post a new bounty and start sharing it with people from all around the world, people who actually believe in the cause behind the bounty. Once you have money in the pot, you can actually start sharing that with people who can actually do the actions. Once they've completed whatever task you've asked for, they submit a proof of that. For example, for us, it was taking a picture of yourself with the trash. And the people who put up the bounty, us the organizers, can immediately see that yes, the proof is valid and immediately accept it. And when we do that, the money goes directly to their wallet on their mobile phones. So these people on the ground don't have to worry about us having the money or having to have their identities verified. They can immediately take that cryptocurrency and connect it with a local exchange to be able to pay their bills.
Okay, as soon as I get a notification, I'm going to accept that and it will send money into your account.
Yes, I'm willing to participate with my volunteers. I say to my volunteers who participate, I say I need 25 persons, but we sign almost 36 persons.
I'm pretty excited by how, willing the participants were to get onboarded, and learn about cryptocurrency. It was kind of inspiring seeing how much their eyes kind of lit up when they had that realization that, this technology has such a big impact.
It is something that is evolving and it is something that is getting easier and it's something that will empower people here to not only improve the health of their environment, like we've seen here at La Papache, but also improve how they earn money, how they can sustain their communities.
Sa trabaho namin, sa marine engineer, hindi ko naman linya yun sa ng recycling. But sa ng trabaho namin, kailangan namin i-resolve yung isang problema na dapat kailangan i-resolve ng paraan kung ano ang magandang gawin sa basura. Kayo, parang kukuha kayo ng basura tapos nyo dyan naipilian ninyo. So separate ninyo yung ito yung mga napili naming basura, yung mga plastic na pangbenta, doon namin nilalagay. So tapos itong mga nabubulok is dyan naman sa kabilang side for composting, shredding, composting. And then yung ibang materials, yung like residual waste, doon na sa melting area namin. So ayan, tinutunaw na lang natin yung yung basura, pero hindi naman siya na ibig sabihin na sinusunog natin. Hindi, minimelt lang siya natin. And then the carbon emission goes up there. Doon sa carbon emission natin, meron tayong pagkukontrol din doon sa usok. So meron tayong ginawang mist na nag-i-spray sa usok para yung carbon bababa, hindi siya aakyat ng paitaas. So ito na yung finished product from residual waste. Meron tayong fence panel, traffic cones, and then the garden tiles. And then ito yung tinatawag kong yung cold mix na product. Ito yung gawa sa semento and then chop o shred residual waste plastic. Dito nagagamit na namin lahat yung mga product namin kagaya ng paso. And then yung ibang is yung panel. Ito na ginagawa naming boardwalk. Na namin to dahil nung una kaming gumawa ng tulay rito, ang ginamit naming material is yung bamboo at saka yung kahoy, wood. Pero hindi siya tumagal dahil nabubulok. Ito siguro naka 3 years na install na namin. Siguro tatagal tong na to. Saka hindi natin malaman na yun pala ang inaapakan natin is basura.
The cool thing about paying people with bounties is that we can leave, but the bounty will still be there. And so people can continue to contribute to it, and likewise, people can continue to fulfill that bounty by picking up trash on a daily basis. So this can become a new source of income for people such that they don't have to worry about the fish populations, but they can actually start cleaning up their local communities.
It's very important to understand how impactful financial incentives can be in a market in an environment like Philippines. Most people here don't have any form of savings. They really, live day to day. So if you're able to offer somebody an incentive, it's going to translate, immediately. So incentives are behavior changing. If you're able to channel that, you're going to be able to mobilize a lot of people.
What happens when a traditional job like fishing stops being sustainable? You need to create new means of income. You need to create and infuse new life into those communities by giving them alternatives. And so the beauty with the bounties-based model is that you essentially can create this task that can be contributed to from all over the world, and the payout goes directly to the people performing those tasks. So we don't have the usual, a certain percentage went to marketing, a certain percentage went to bonuses for execs. You have the full pot of the bounty going directly to the individuals performing the work. And so that not only mobilizes funds on a global level, but it mobilizes and it enables and it empowers work at an individual and community level.
We saw that monetary incentives were a great way to get people on the ground, but now that they're here, they actually can look past those incentives and really feel the intrinsic motivation.
Doon sa case ng ako masaya din sa aking trabaho, masaya ako. Hindi mo magagawa yung isang bagay sa iyong trabaho kung hindi ka dedicated doon sa isang trabaho o hindi mo siya gusto. May babahagi ko sa mga kabataan kung mga nagawa namin. May kasasaya. Itong ginagawa namin is hindi para sa amin, kundi para sa next future or generation. Not for me, for the future.
What an amazing and inspiring experiment and documentary. So thank you for that. We would love for you, Simona, to share, how it was on the ground. Did you encounter any specific challenge? A lot of your teams were there. How was it to work with the local leaders there? Would love for you to share that with the audience.
Absolutely. So thank you so much also everybody for the lovely comments. It's one of the main reasons why I believe that showing versus telling is so much more powerful. And it's the main reason why we wanted to document what we did, because it is a testament of, number one, how incredibly inspiring it is, but also how difficult it is. So the story, and again, the main reason why we picked the Philippines was also because something very, very important when you create a pilot and when you work in a country that doesn't necessarily have the same access, and also when you create a project that depends on so many moving parts, it is very important to establish partnerships. So Ronald, who you saw there, is actually working at this recycling plant. But he also is part of that fisherman community that we were close to at La Pabachea. And the reason why we needed a recycling company is because we obviously did not want for people to just clean things up and then where does it go? We needed to dispose of it, we needed to segregate the trash, and we needed to recycle it. So very important to have that partnership on the ground. The other character that you saw there was Coins.ph. And Coins.ph, Ron, who you saw there, is saying that incentives can be incredibly powerful. Coins.ph, what they do is they actually have a network that enables you to make payments and buy things, pay bills, top up your phone without the need for a bank account. So they have these cards and these wallets that people can have on their phones. And what they did just before we launched the pilot is they actually added ETH to the wallet that Coins.ph has, and it's quite widespread and quite well used throughout the Philippines. And again, this was incredibly, incredibly important for the offboarding part. Because again, as we know with crypto, it's absolutely wonderful that you can earn it, but then what? So we didn't want to be in that situation where we just turn up, we do this for 2 days, and then give people magic internet money and then say goodbye and leave. So having those two ingredients was incredibly, incredibly important for it to be a pilot that shows it's a sustainable project, and it's something that is can be replicated and can be then maintained on an ongoing basis. And then so that was incredibly, incredibly important. And then of course the other very, very important piece is we needed to check what wallets were available to download in the Philippines, because in at the end of 2018 in the Philippines, the only wallet that you could download was actually Trust Wallet. So no other wallet was available to download in the Philippines aside Trust Wallet. No MetaMask, no status, no nothing. So this was again a very important testing process that we had to establish, where we needed somebody on the ground to test what wallets were available. And so the main ingredients, once they were there, they were essentially reassured us that this was the right geography to test this in. And I guess the main two things, other than all of these ingredients being there, being present, were the education part and then the mobile phone, smartphone presence. We had over 200 people join us across the 2 days from this fisherman community. And I would say that smartphone use was probably around the 40%, 50%. And when you take that into account, you obviously have all of these sophisticated tools, but if you can't access them, then what is the point? Luckily for us, because they were all part of the same community, we had that element of trust. So what we did was we actually paired people who didn't have smartphones around, or grouped them around people who did, so that there was that element of trust that if you get the reward for me, you then will give me the pesos once you exchange the ETH into Filipino peso. So thankfully we had that, because without that, again, we would have had certain attendees who would not have been able to benefit equally from this opportunity. So those, I would say, were the main ones. And then obviously another key hurdle was the connectivity on the beach. We were on a beach. We could not set up a Wi-Fi hotspot We did attempt it. We couldn't do it. So what was happening was we actually assigned our team. So the director and the editor were there. We were there from the bounty side. We also had a couple of members of BSIC on the ground there with us. And then luckily, we also had some volunteers coming in before ETH Singapore. So on their way to ETH Singapore, they actually stopped in the Philippines to give us a hand and basically run the onboarding with us for all the people participating. And we all ended up hotspotting people off our phones. So because data is so expensive there, because there was no other internet connection, and because the transactions were being particularly slow, of course, we actually had to hotspot people off our phones whilst transactions were going through and whilst they were fulfilling the bounty.
So a practical way to deal with things. So we
I
see
mean, you
challenges on the ground, ranging from partnership, education, smartphone availability, connectivity, and also the capacity to create the connection between the crypto and the real cash.
Yes.
It can be a challenge in some communities and in some countries. And besides the challenges, I'm sure there are some things that were very successful, which you did not anticipate in terms of the behavior of people participating or people supporting. What was extraordinarily successful that you did not anticipate in that pilot?
So one of the main things, and this was one of the reasons why we decided to run this pilot, is because I really wanted to prove that this model is so much better and so much more efficient than current models of dispersing funds across borders. And the fact that we created that bounty in ETH, so it's different from the one that I mentioned earlier in DAI. One of the reasons why we couldn't create one in DAI is because coins.ph didn't support ERC20. So we had to create a new one in ETH, which was absolutely fine. But what we did was actually, when we created this new one, I set it up for the long term, because I wanted to see, and this was definitely something that I didn't necessarily expect to happen. So we set it up for these 2 days where we had people obviously doing the cleanup. And by the way, we didn't do the cleanup for a full day. We were only able to do 2 or 2.5 hours per day because it got so hot. It was December, and in the Philippines, it is summertime. So it is incredibly, incredibly hot. And because this beach, as you saw it, was full of trash, but definitely not full of trees, we didn't want to subject people to, high temperatures whilst doing this laborious work. So we only cleaned for 2.5 hours across the 2 days. And in that time, we cleaned 3.3 tons of trash because it was so plentiful, let's say, and we obviously had a very good turnout, but there was a lot more to be done. And the great thing that we observed after the event was done is that a certain number of the people who were there across the 2 days continued doing cleanups. Because number one, now they knew where this recycling plant was. Number two, they were already set up with a wallet. They knew how to convert the ETH into Filipino peso. They were all set up to continue doing this, continue doing regular cleanups so that you restore the environment to its former health, and continue earning. And we kept that bounty going for 6 months, where, as I mentioned in the documentary as well, we actually crowdsourced the pot for that bounty. Sure, we put some money in as the Bounties Network. The BSAC actually helped us out as well. But then what started happening is we were getting contributions from other projects in the ecosystem. We were also getting individual donations because we had set up a little landing page for people to either sign up to come and help us, or if they couldn't, to donate. So we started seeing people donating $5 worth of ETH, $10, $20. And even as we kept it going for the 6 months, I one day had a message on LinkedIn from somebody saying, hey, I just got paid for a technical interview. They paid me $300 worth in crypto. Can I just contribute it all to the pot? And I was like, yes, of course. There is a simple contribute button on the bounty. You can absolutely add that to the pot, because again, everybody knew that the only way or the only recipients of that money would be the people who are submitting verifiable proofs of these continued cleanups. So I think that was one of the main things that just confirmed the fact that this is a worthy model. Yes, there's a lot of work to be done, and yes, there are so many things to still solve, but it is such an effective model where I didn't have to set up an entity there. I didn't have to fly people over. I didn't have to do any of that, or deal with international bank transfers, or make sure that people were, are plugged into the SWIFT network. By the way, not many people are. And so it is so much more efficient.
And so that begs the questions, how do you continue this model? How do you make it sustainable? Are there other ways for governments or other types of entity to create their own bounty? Is this a repeatable model? People can just take it and repeat it? Or how do you keep that specific project alive? And is the goal to keep that specific project alive, or to just replicate it?
I think this particular pilot was very much a way of proving that this is something that is not only feasible, but can have a lot of a very big impact. And a kind of a model that you could use to redesign whatever flows you currently have as a government, or as a charitable institution, or as an organization, in improving the way you do things. We, again, try to keep it going for as long as possible, by obviously getting these donations, getting people contributing directly, us topping it up now and again. But the idea is that you would want a series of potentially corporates to deploy corporate social responsibility funds to something like this, that is potentially in line with their values, with whatever it is that they support, with whatever it is that they want to spend that CSR money on. Because corporate social responsibility funds, we're talking about trillions of dollars, and there must be better ways to spend those than what we have now. And also, even talking to people from, for instance, I was at the European Blockchain Summit back in Malaga last year, and speaking to people to members of the World Food Program, being able to deploy funds in certain regions is still done by strapping cash onto a human being and getting them across the board, which is not only insanely dangerous, but how is this still the situation that we find ourselves in at this late stage in our human development and technological development? So I think you have to have, again, like I mentioned, having all of those ingredients on the ground. I think tapping into all of the funds that are right now, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of them are being misused, or certainly I don't know where they go. And providing a more efficient model and providing a more efficient alternative, you then start seeing this collaboration where actually you're replacing what was with something a lot better. And what I will also say is, in the Philippines, we should have and could have, and may potentially still do so in the future, partnered with one of the main telecommunication companies in the country, and provide people or communities with the, a some sort of basic smartphone. Because not only does that mean that you are, enabling communities to tap into the digital economy, but you are also enabling people to stay connected, to again get to this level of connectivity that we love and enjoy over here, but at the same time realize that it is not the same story everywhere else. And so I think all of these collaborations and partnerships will be what make this a sustainable model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we see the empowerment of the local population, which is incredible. One last question on my side, and then we'll open it up for questions. I see the chat exploding. And one last question regarding access to crypto and adoption to crypto. I think a lot of people in this chat or this Zoom conference are, share the vision that this transfer from peer to peer by crypto really allows for much more collaboration and commerce, and allows people to have access to funds which they wouldn't have access before. How much do you think the population that you were working with saw crypto as a solution as opposed to just something, a representation of existing cash that they would have access to more easily?
So I think, and again, this is where potentially the educational piece comes in, which is important, but at the same time, we essentially just did a very simple explanation of this is a different kind of money, and it's digital, it's electronic, but you are able to exchange it. I think being able to tell them that they could exchange it in something that they knew was important, just for this very, basic use case. But I think, and I'll give you another example, just because we keep talking about the Philippines, and yes, emerging economies and emerging communities are going to be the ones that feel this more than anybody else, the need for an alternative. But what I will say is, even in a country like the United States, one of the first uses of PIPO, which is the project that I work with now, was to post a video about a Brandon who is a homeless member of the Bounties network community. He started doing bounties to earn some cash, and it was crypto, and he was cashing out at crypto ATMs in Phoenix, Arizona. At some point, I saw that he wasn't fulfilling any bounties. It was kind of like the activity had stagnated. So I messaged him to ask if everything was okay, if there's anything that we can do to help. And he messaged me back a few days later and said, oh, this laptop that I was using has finally, died a death. And what I did then was I was thinking, okay, who do I know in Phoenix, Arizona? I don't know anybody in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I posted a video on Pipo saying, is anybody from Phoenix, Arizona who has a secondhand laptop or a laptop lying around that they could help? And actually, nobody was from Phoenix, Arizona. Where are the people in Phoenix, Arizona? But what happened was within 48 hours, I had over $250 that people had sent to that video in Pipo tokens that I could then redeem in the Pipo store, turn those into an Amazon voucher, send the code to Brandon. Brandon bought a laptop, got it delivered at an Amazon pickup point, and now the local library lets him store it for at night so it doesn't get stolen or damaged. This is where you are talking about, what would have been my alternatives? Sure, I would have got people to send me money so that I would then buy a voucher so that I would send it to him and so on. But this was so much easier. If you think I'm in Europe, I have PayPal. You're in the States, you have Venmo. If you have one, you probably won't have the other. What would have been the other alternative? I would have set a GoFundMe page. All of this complexity was completely and utterly removed. And I was able to achieve all of this transfer of value within let's say 48 hours, another 24 by the time he got the laptop, whatever. Very short space of time. So the level of access to resource that this enables, and the better we get, the more education we do, the better the offboarding, the better the onboarding, the easier it's going to become. And those are the things that you know, excite me about this space. And that is why looking at blockchain solutions with the user in mind and for the end user, and figuring out what the different models are to improve a certain situation are incredibly, incredibly important and very impactful. Whether it's for one person, whether it's for 200, whether it's for 5,000, you know, or 1 million or more.
Thank you, Simona. We're going to start taking questions from the audience. We have Ahmed from Yalla team who had a question. Ahmed, do you want to ask your question directly or post it in the chat? If you're speaking, we can't hear you right now. Okay, well, we'll wait until you're ready to ask the questions. Renan, do you want to ask a question?
Yes,
please go ahead.
Hi, Simona.
Hello.
Hello. I'm working on the plastic pollution challenge, and using Brazil as an example, we have a lot of plastic waste everywhere we go, in the streets, in the rivers, poor communities, not only in the seas. And much of this is because of the lack of education. Do you intend to expand the waste collection to different places and not only the seas, the ocean?
So one of the best things about decentralized technology is that anybody can create a bounty. And actually, speaking of Brazil, we did a program with the Blockchain Academy in Brazil, where we were teaching kids from the favelas to code, and also teaching them about blockchain at the same time, and then peppering the course with bounties so they could earn as they were going through the course. I think marrying the two, education and crypto, can be incredibly, incredibly powerful. And also if you create an event that potentially this all leads to, and you're doing it in collaboration with some local organizations, I think that is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And again, anybody can set these things up. I think obviously the problem will be the funds, sure, to fund that bounty. But again, I think once you're able to figure out what the ingredients are and how you're going to shape potentially some kind of educational material and who you would partner with, I think you can start small and then build from there.
Okay. And another question, if you don't mind. As I understand, you created bounty on the platform, the bounty network, and people need to submit to the bounty. Then you do the manual distribution of the bounty. Is that right?
So it's not the manual distribution of the bounty, because if you look at any of the bounties, like just go to explorer.bounties.network and you'll see some of the different bounties that are on there. But essentially, as long as a submission abides by the requirements that you have set, so taking the Basura one as an example, it was photo by the trash with a right. Okay. As long as that picture matches your requirements, you then click accept for the submission and the funds get transferred immediately. Well, as soon as the transaction confirms. So the only manual piece is you looking at the submission and making sure that it is in line with the requirements. The reason why we do that and we don't automate it is because we have so many different types of bounties that it is very hard to automate, certainly ones that are a little bit more creative or that require some sort of back and forth a little bit. So it's very hard to automate the acceptance, which I think is good especially for now, whilst we still, figure this whole Web3 world out.
So we have another question from Mark Liberati on the verifiability. Mark, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, hi. I'm currently working for United Nations Volunteers, and I was a volunteer myself. So the aspect, I was very inspired by the whole project, but I was thinking around of some of the verification aspects and how you see on scaling them up. So on the particular, because like sort of what gets measured gets done. So on the thinking around a fully decentralized model where you would have these bounties around for various tasks, what were some of your lessons learned and some brainstorming thoughts around improving the verification, everything from time stamping it to, having it like authenticated by other parties potentially there, because you wouldn't have any managers in this system. And then also who then is the central authority that is doing that validation, or can that be done either through some really smart AI technology that would sort of match that, or decentralizing that to other parties? Thank you.
So we, again, this whole photo date stamp thing, I from the beginning said it is incredibly rustic and absolutely should not be the norm. AI, of course. I think on a case-by-case basis, and this is where, we're so used to putting all the responsibility on a company, but we need to remember that decentralized technology means that it is a tool that enables you to do things. How you shape it and how you use it, and of course the AI verification and so on, that's something that would be that would need to be baked into the tech. But depending on what you are using a bounty for, will have very, very different requirements. This one was simple because yes, okay, a photo to prove that you actually did something. But if you're talking supply chain, if you're talking also like, let's say, carbon credits, depending on what the use case is, those requirements will vary quite wildly. And I think figuring out what the different needs are per very specific use case is something that we're not going to be able to do alone. So I would take that and then potentially even figure out how you fork it and apply it to what you want to do, because it's all open source. So that's the other thing to really, really remember. It's something that is very, very open to creative problem solving. If you can use it for, and I'll give you an example of a project that was actually a ConsenSys grants grantee. They created a a platform for incentivizing the people of South Africa to go and get HIV tests through bounties, right? Because a big problem in South Africa is that people do not get tested early enough. Therefore, the treatment is incredibly costly, and also the cost of lives people lose their life because they don't get tested. Therefore, it's full-blown AIDS, and by the time they can get treated, it's already too late. And they employed bounties to do this mechanism of incentivizing people to get tested. So this is the time to very creatively take what is there already and use it for your purposes.
Thank you, Simona. Another question, in your experience, what is the good amount to offer in order to get enough engagement from the bounty? This is a question from Juan Diosdado.
So I would say and this is again another consideration depending on what geography you are dealing with. When we set up that original bounty that I mentioned with the 10 die, that was clearly a lot of money to pay for a trash cleaner, right? That was quite high. But when we went to the Philippines, we actually spoke to people on the ground and said, okay, what is the average that people earn per hour? What is the average that people earn per day? Because the other thing that you don't want to do is go somewhere into a community or an economy and then start, flooding it with foreign cash so that you could destabilize some very, very fragile dynamics that you have no idea about, and you're there for a short while and then you go away. So these are very, very important considerations, and you should always potentially take that into account depending on where you aim for that solution to be applied. And also, if you are doing it per region, make sure that it fits into that region's dynamics.
There's another question around incentivizing the continuation of this project from Juliana. Is what mechanisms did you put in place in the Philippines to keep the work ongoing instead of a one-time event? So for the 6 months, for example, that you mentioned.
We honestly did not put any real, much work into that. We essentially wanted to see if the locals would continue doing it, because now they knew what to do. They had the tools to do it. But of course, again, had we had some sort of partnership with some sort of local company so that we could continue funding it and continue and potentially bring more communities in, then of course those would be the ingredients again for a much more sustainable mechanism. Again, from this perspective, we really wanted to test out, number one, if it could be done, number two, whether people would continue doing it, and those are two things that we actually did achieve. I think without partnerships on the ground, it is very, very difficult to do. And those partnerships will vary, again, wildly depending on the geography, because certain countries have certain feelings about crypto, regulations come into play, being able to educate different organizations on what the benefits are, what the implications are, what they need to do, what kind of resources they need to put towards it is laborious. So, but I definitely something that I see happening in the future 100%.
Another question more related to the bounty. Is there a bounty white paper that people can read? A technical white paper on Gitcoin or bounty?
All I can do is essentially send you to the Bounties Network Medium. We don't have a token, so we've never ever created a token. We were token agnostic, and that's what the way we wanted to be, because actually it is something that I believe, enabled us to collaborate with a lot of the different projects without having that kind of friction. No, which token should we use, mine or yours? And also because I think, there's definitely a lot of information on that medium about all sorts of different projects that we did, all sorts of different learnings that I think would be useful as well. So I think it is literally, let me see. Yeah, it's literally Medium. I'm just going to post it here in the chat. And then obviously my Twitter handle is this, so please ping me with any other questions about this, about PIPO, about any other thoughts with regards to how to look at crypto, how to build with the user in mind, what pitfalls we experienced, what learnings we had. I'm more than happy to chat through all of those, because I think they're very important things to consider if we do want the adoption that we're all striving for.
Thank you, Simona. And don't forget, for those who are participating in the BSIC incubator, if you use the Pepper app and do your little presentation, that's taking into account for special prizes. So
yes, so this is very important, and I think this is one of the key reasons why we wanted to do a UX prize, because again, it's very, very important that what you build is usable and what you build solves a problem for a specific user. So the BSIC community in PIPO, what I would urge you all to introduce what your project is about. Why are you building it? What is it? Why? What moves you to do it? And then also apply for the UX Awards, which I'm going to share again in the Gitcoin chat, so that you get recognized for the work that you're doing and for this the projects that you're building with that user in mind and with delivering real value, which I think is crucial for us all at this time.
Yeah, and as we are all online, Pepper really allows you to connect in a different way that we've never had before in the crypto community, and you'll probably get a lot of really great support if you would start talking about your projects in that community. Simona, thank you so much. This was really, really inspiring. You want to say a last thing?
I want to say one more thing because I keep asking me all these questions. So yes, you can get to the Bounties Network through the API. It is all open, and I can share the documentation. I'll share it in Gitcoin chat as well. And then yes, we are working with being able to upload pre-recorded videos onto PIPO, and also we just launched PIPO Live. So communities can now have live events so that they can share what they're doing. These calls we could do as a PIPO Live, and actually that's what we should do for the next one, guys.
Absolutely.
We do that? Okay, let's do that. And then
everyone, a big round of applause for Simona. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll be speaking soon, I'm sure, whether in the incubator or elsewhere. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.